What's up, guys? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. This is season 6, episodes 7 and 8. Okay, I thought I wasn't gonna have to do this again. I hate doing double reviews, but life has been lifing, and here we are. So let's get into it. Sometimes before we get into the review, sometimes we get a little spicy. Well, I did 2 spicy corners, and I'll put the thumbnail on the screen. The link for them will be in the links for them will be in the description box below. If you are interested, please check them out. All right, but let's get into the review. All right, y'all. So let's get into episode 7. So it opens up, and the women are at arriving at the airport. We find out that Lisa and Meredith already made their way to the gate, but we see the rest of the ladies pulling up to the airport lobby. That's what I call it, and I think that's what people call it, because that's where you got to check in, check your bags if you need to, get your tickets and all that stuff before you get to TSA. And so we see a group of the ladies: Britani, Whitney, Heather, Angie, and Mary's coming up from the back. But Britani ends up asking, where's Bronwyn? And Whitney ends up reading off this text where Bronwyn basically says that she's not going to be able to make the flight, but she hopes everyone has a safe trip. She also says that she's going to be late, but she'll be arriving or get to them when they're in Canico. Mind you, my brain has been wanting to say Cancun, but I was like, that's not how you spell Cancun. But my brain is like, it looks like Cancun, and I have to think, no, Canico. Okay. So we actually see the women get on the flight. And while they're on the flight, Whitney talks about how she feels as though Bronwyn is damned if she does, damned if she don't. She's like, if she comes on the trip, we're going to talk about what's out there about her. If she doesn't come on the trip, we're still going to talk about it. She also brings up how anytime you type in Bronwyn's name or you see her name on social media, right beside her name is Grand Theft Auto or Grand Theft or Identity Theft. And they show headlines from the U.S. Sun as well as Bravo Snarkside. And y'all know we reference them over here all the time. And so she's just like, she understands why Bronwyn would not want to come on the trip or would be late coming on the trip. So we see the ladies actually make it to Canico. They show us, a drone view of the yacht. It's massive. It's really nice though. And we see them being greeted by Captain Jason. Mind you, I am not a watcher of Below Deck. I've seen maybe 2 or 3 episodes. It took me a long time before I realized that there's 3 different versions, or maybe even more, but I think there's 3 different versions of Below Deck because there's 3 different captains. You have Captain Jason, Captain Sandy, and the one to me that looked like a toned down version of Santa. The gray hair or the white hair, the white beard and all of that stuff. And so once I realized there was 3, different versions, I was like, oh, okay, that show is that popular that they can have this many different captains and different crews. So pretty much he greets all of them. We have this crossover episode. I will say episode 7, I was annoyed with them constantly giving the perspective of the crew because I was like, I don't watch Below Deck. I don't care about these people like that. But episode 8, I got used to it. And then I started to think okay, I do think this is a well thought out crossover episode because it still feels like a housewife episode, just the added effect of the crew talking and giving their thoughts. And it's probably going to be the same when their episode airs with the women on their show. So they get on the yacht. You can tell that there's still beef between Lisa and Angie because you got Lisa shading Angie in the confessional talking about, girl, this is a great trip for Angie because all she do is ride in RVs. And then you got Angie saying, she's so excited. She's never been on a yacht. But every time she's around Lisa, her energy goes from here to down here. But she was like, at least when I stand beside Lisa, my ankles look small. Basically saying either Lisa is fatter than her or her legs look bloated. Either way, they throwing shots at each other. So when they get on the yacht, Lisa is like, I'll drink this tequila right here, but from here on out, we're going to be drinking Vita tequila, okay? One thing Lisa going to do is plug her business. I've never drinking Vita tequila. I've heard mixed reviews. Some people say it's good. Some people say it's not so great. Either way, Lisa said, I got a business to push and I got this platform, so I'm going to push it. So I can't hate too much, okay? So we see Brittany flirting with one of the staff. We also hear one of the staff guys talk about how like it's like the worst thing about like working on the yacht is having to bring the luggage onto the yacht. He's like, girl, it'd be too much. But we see her flirting with this other guy by the name of Mike, and he's passing her out, I think, tequila shots or margarita shots or something like that. And she is like flirting with him because he has an accent. I thought it was Australian, but my subtitles said that it was British. As she's doing it, then you have Brittany being boy crazy in her confessional, talking about like, it's a smorgasbord of men. Like, I'm in heaven right now. They're all handsome and attractive with big arms. Like, oh my God, it's men everywhere. And it's like, it's really embarrassing to be 54 and boy crazy. Like, finding out that Brittany is 54, I'm just like, girl, you're the oldest person on this cast acting like this. You should be embarrassed. like it's one thing. Because let me tell you, I don't know what's going on, but the guy that's the lead character, I think his name is Tyreek Withers. In him, he is so attractive to me. He's so handsome to me, okay? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, it's okay to have a cute little crush. But like, girl, she be acting like she ain't never been around dick before. And I'm like, Brittany, you're an adult. You're 54. Stop. like at first it was kind of funny. Now I'm just like, girl, no wonder your kids be annoyed by you, girl. So we see them divvying out the rooms or the cabins. We find out that every room gets 2 girls to a room. So you have Whitney and Heather pairing up, Mary and Angie, Lisa and Meredith, and then Bronwyn and Brittany. And Brittany is not happy. Brittany is like, girl, what? Bronwyn and me? She was like, why would you do that? like, you know that girl don't like me. You know she don't like me. Like, what are we going to do stuck in this room together? Like, are you serious? Like, are you? And Heather was like, girl, she might not even show up. So, like, let's not, like, don't worry about it. So, basically, she tells everybody, let's all just go up to the deck. So the girls go up to the deck, and Heather decides to give them a speech about being on their best behavior. She was like, I'm cool with Captain Jason, but he don't know we crazy. So can we just keep the crazy contained enough on this trip to where he still want to talk to me afterwards? And I said, girl, I don't know why you thought that was going to happen. So then we find out that Brittany got a crush on Captain Jason, because she ends up being like, where is he? And they're like, girl, driving the boat. He's the captain. And so everyone's like, girl, what about Jared? And she's like, well, me and Jared, we're really doing this 30-day break. Okay, I said, okay, girl. But you have Heather in her confessional saying she kind of admires the fever or the fever that Brittany has for the opposite sex. I said, no, that's embarrassing. But also the way Heather and Brittany's friendship makes sense, because the way that Heather was so excited to tell everybody that she slept with Captain Jason, I was like, girl, that's desperate. like, girl, what? Like, you too old, because I think Heather's like 51 or 52. Why are y'all behaving this way? So, as the women are making their way to the table to have lunch, we end up hearing Brittany in the confessional talk about how, like, she's really trying to take this 30-day break from Jared really seriously, but then she contradicts herself by telling us that Jared helped her pack the day before the trip. She also says that having that conversation with Terrence, the medium, was really insightful. And I said, was it? Because your behavior hasn't changed, ma'am. I don't think it was. So, while the women are sitting at the table, Meredith basically tells Brittany, look, we'll support you in your pursuit of Jason, Captain Jason, but we don't want to hear about Jared no more. And she's like, okay, like, I won't speak about him, but are y'all serious? And they're like, yeah, girl. Then Whitney ends up saying that, like, if you say Jared's name, we're going to throw water on you. And I guess Brittany didn't believe her, but she says Jared's name. Meredith picks up a pitcher and dumps it onto Brittany. And then Whitney dumps her cup of water onto Brittany. And then you see one of the staff workers being like, oh my God, like really surprised. And you could tell that she was making a mental note of like, oh, these women about to be wild. This is about to be one of them type of trips. So while they're eating their lunch, one of the workers comes to tell them that Bronwyn is on her way and she's by another boat. So she comes in. I think it was a cute moment. I don't think it was as iconic as everyone was trying to make it seem on Twitter, especially once Lisa revealed that she already wore that outfit before. I think had we not known she wore that outfit before, I think it would have ate better, but still a moment nonetheless, but it wasn't iconic, okay? So she pulls up, but while she's pulling up to the yacht, we hear Bronwyn in the confessional talking about how all she can hear in her head is Todd saying, like, why would you want to go on a trip with Lisa, somebody that constantly lies on you? So she's hoping that Todd isn't right and that she does have a fun trip. So when she's getting onto the yacht, you see the women up at the deck and you hear Lisa saying, like, girl, I feel like she got a lot on her plate. And she's having a conversation with Angie. Angie's like, what do you mean, Lisa Barlow? Trying to insinuate that Lisa is the culprit of this information coming out. And Lisa's like, well, I'm just saying she retaliated against me, and it seems like somebody is retaliating against her. And then in the confessional, Lisa ends up saying, I don't like to throw the word karma around all the time, but it is kind of crazy that Bronwyn was so worried about what I got going on with my lawsuits, but yet you have all these icky skeletons in your closet. And I have to agree with Lisa. Like, Bronwyn was one of the people that was so hell-bent on making Lisa own her lawsuits and, like, you know, really tell them the truth. But yeah, girl, you're associated with grand theft and identity theft. And then when you're asked about this situation, you really aren't explaining what took place. And you're saying it had nothing to do with you. But yeah, girl, that's still out there that identity theft and grand theft auto was associated with your name. Okay. So then Angie is like, Lisa Barlow, what are you getting at? And I'm looking at Angie like, this is why people think that y'all are trying to take Lisa down, because you're trying to insinuate that she's the culprit of this information, yet and still you and Whitney were the ones that brought this information to us. You are the ones that were like, Mary, did you see all that stuff that was out there about Bronwyn? Do you know the tea? And that's why I say I do not really think that Angie or Whitney really like Bronwyn. Maybe Whitney likes Bronwyn, but I really don't think Angie does. Especially now that there's screenshots out there of her talking poorly about Bronwyn in the DMs with bloggers. I don't think she likes that lady. And I think Bronwyn is just a means to an end for Angie. So, and honestly, the way that Angie moved, especially on episode 8, if I were friends with Angie, I would be weary and be very selective of what I tell Angie. Because the behavior that Bronwyn was chastising Lisa about by saying she was like a gout dick sucker, saying that that's something I told you 5 years ago, Angie is doing the same thing that Lisa does. And I'm like, but y'all don't want to check Angie because she's doing it to Lisa. And I've been in that type of situation where I've allowed somebody's behavior to, like, go unchecked because they weren't doing it towards me. But the moment they did it to me or they did it to somebody that I was closer to, I had an issue with, and I had to check myself. But I do see Angie switching up on people, and I do see the lady switching up on Angie, because I feel like next season, Angie is probably going to be the target, because it can't be every season Lisa Barlow is the villain or Lisa Barlow is the person that needs to be held accountable, because I don't believe what they're doing is accountability. To me, accountability has empathy and, like, tact to it. They're just trying to humble Lisa and, like, humiliate her at this point because they don't like her, which is their choice too. But you can't hold somebody accountable and not do it with kindness, because that's not accountability. You just want to punish the lady. What they're doing is punishing her because of Lisa's past behaviors. Not saying that it should go unchecked, but don't say that it's accountability, because that's not accountability. It's just not. So Bronwyn gets on the boat. She's not too happy when she finds out that her and Britani are rooming together. She's like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah, girl, you are rooming together. And Bronwyn's like, girl, I'm not Jared, so we're not sleeping in the same bed together. And everyone's like, yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. So then while they're in the room and Bronwyn is trying to get her stuff situated, Britani pulls out this stuffed unicorn. She presses on it, and y'all, why is this Jared's voice saying, good night, baby, you are loved? Ew. Like, when I tell you, that gave me such the ick. I said, Britani, are you serious? Like, I only find that stuff cute when it's like a past family member. Like, my sister still has a voice recording of my granny that passed away almost 3 years ago, and her birthday's coming up here soon, and she wants to go to Build-A-Bear and do that. And that I get. I've seen people gift, you know, their loved ones when they get deployed a voice of, like, a parent. But, like, your man doing that and he not dead is weird. It's weird. I don't like it. Britani, it's weird. So, the next thing we have is of Meredith and Lisa. They're having a conversation in their room. Pretty much, it seems as though both of them are surprised that Bronwyn even showed up because maybe they thought she wouldn't. So we find out that neither one of them have really spoken to Bronwyn since she got on the yacht. Meredith says she wanted to, but she was like, Heather told her not to bring up what's going on in the press. So you then end up hearing Meredith say, hopefully when we do ask her about what's going on, she's honest and transparent about it. And I said, hopefully. So then we switch the scene to Bronwyn and Britani back in their cabin, and they're arguing. I don't know what they're arguing about. I guess they were arguing about the closet space. Either way, it's whatever. Eventually it stops, and Bronwyn brings up and tells Britani that she almost did not come on the trip. And Brittany's like, you really weren't gonna come? And she was like, no, because I feel like someone is out here planting stories about me in the press. And Britani was like, you really think somebody's doing that? And Bronwyn was like, yes, I do. So in the confessional, it switches to Bronwyn in her confessional, and she's basically saying that the stuff that is being put out there is like stuff that happened 20 years ago. She's like, the story has changed multiple times. But 20 years ago, she got kicked out of BYU. She left Utah to go back to San Francisco. She didn't pay her rent, and she got an eviction notice, and a judgment was, filed against her. She said there's another situation that they're talking about that they're trying to say is current, but it's not. It's something that happened almost like I think she said like 10 years ago, but they can't find any information out there because it's sealed other than this penal code that's attached to it. And that penal code is classified under grand theft, identity theft, and fraud. And so that's the code that I read for you guys, or the, it is. We read that in one of the spicy corners. Check out the spicy corners, okay? We getting into the information and things. But pretty much, she was like, that's the only thing that they can speculate about because the case is sealed. She goes on to say how this is really like hurting her family, but mostly it's hurting Todd. And so then the scene goes back to her and Britani in their cabin. And pretty much she's just like, like, Todd is a very serious person. He deals in serious business. She was like, Todd isn't someone that deals in lies and nastiness. But I'm like, well, girl, I would think Todd does deal in lies and nastiness. When last season you told us that man cheated on you and your daughter found out about it and then told you. That to me is very much not lies and nastiness, if you hear me. But to be honest, I will say I get Todd being upset or embarrassed by this information being out there about Bronwyn. But if Bronwyn is saying all this stuff happened 10 or 20 years ago, you and her have been together for, it seems, at least 9 or 8 years. Because then they celebrate like their 9th or 8th wedding anniversary. And if they did, then girl, you knew about this stuff before she got on this show. So you willingly married her because I hope Bronwyn was honest about her past, knowing this information. So why would you be ashamed and embarrassed now when everybody knows about it? Like, like here's my thing. If I'm going to marry somebody and I know about their history, I'm not going to be ashamed because at the end of the day, I took the initiative to marry you. Just because other people know about it, that don't, like I always say, you can't be shamed by something that you're not ashamed of. Like you can't, okay? Like there's a lot of things out there where I'd be like, girl, I would be embarrassed and ashamed. But them people are not embarrassed and ashamed because they're not ashamed or embarrassed by what they're doing. So I it is what it is. I would not be taking on Todd's feelings if I was Bronwyn. Like he knew when y'all got married. So she's just like, I was really debating whether or not I was going to come on this trip. Like, am I going to fly and be on the plane that long just to be around people that I think is putting this information out there about me? So then we see the ladies back on the deck, sitting at the table they were at beforehand, eating and drinking. You can tell that Angie is not feeling well. We find out later on, girl, she got seasickness, and girl, it took her out. You throwing up in the ocean. Captain Jason got to come and put ice packs on your legs to help you get your sea legs. Just a mess. So they're all sitting at the table, and you can tell that it's awkward. Heather tries to break up the tension by being like, hey, let's cheers. Bronwyn is here. And so they're like, yeah, welcome and blah, blah, blah. So then Bronwyn ends up saying that, there's been a lot of things out there about me. The narrative is being twisted. Some of that stuff is not true. So then Meredith speaks up and she said, well, look, I didn't get into the specifics of what happened, but I did see some things that were out there that were pretty recent. So what about that? And then even Heather was like, yeah, I saw stuff dated back to 2021. And that is what I saw. I didn't see anything about Bronwyn being evicted from her apartment. The grand theft and all of that stuff was dated back during that time. And so I'm looking at Bronwyn like, I don't think you're being honest, or I think two things are happening. Either Bronwyn is not being honest about her situation, or one, this situation happened or the criminal activity took place 10 years ago, but people that were involved in it did not get charged until 2022. Or 2022, but 2021. Because I'm like, they don't just be putting random charges on people, girl. Like, well, unless you black or, you know, a minority. Okay, because they love to slap that on black people. But that's either here or there, okay? But I'm just like, I don't think Bronwyn is being honest, okay? So she's just like, you know, she got evicted from her apartment and blah, blah, blah after getting kicked out of BYU and all of that stuff. And Mary is like, well, why would somebody bring that up? And so then Heather reiterates again, like, girl, some of those charges are 4 years old. And then Meredith chimes in and she's like, well, I think you should try to clear it up or explain, because if you don't, it makes it look worse. So then Bronwyn was like, look, I didn't get arrested. I cooperated with authorities. There's no mugshot. And she was like, there's nothing there, but people are just speculating because they can't open up the case because it's sealed. So then Heather was like, then why are you upset about it? And then Lisa chimes in and she's like, yeah, why does it matter if you don't care about it? So Bronwyn basically says that pretty much she didn't start having these issues with people putting negative things in the press until she started hanging out with this group. So she's just like, I think that maybe it's somebody in this group. So you see Heather and Whitney like eyeing each other like, ooh, we got Lisa, pretty much. Like really like, ooh, Bronwyn's putting two and two together. And so Lisa was like, I don't think anybody did that. Like, I don't think anybody in this group did that. She was like, I don't think anybody would do that in this group. Like, we've been around each other too long to be doing that type of stuff. So Bronwyn kind of has this look like, Lisa, girl, what are you talking about? So Whitney was like, well, then how are people getting detailed information about her? It's weird that this stuff is coming up in this group. And then Lisa was like, I'm just being direct. I just don't think anybody in this group would do that. She's like, I mean, like, I just don't think somebody would bring up that stuff. Like, I was upset with you for what you did to me with my lawsuits, but I just felt like nobody else would do that in this group. I don't believe not one person in this group would do something like this. So then you have Whitney and Heather in their confessionals being like, Lisa's telling on herself. Like, girl, pipe down. Like, you're making it obvious. So then Lisa's like, I don't want this to be spun on me. Like, I don't want to be targeted. So then Heather's in the confessional being like, well, you know, mocking Lisa, saying, well, you know, you leaked my lawsuits, but I don't think anybody else would leak your lawsuits. And so Lisa's like, it's not me. It's not me. I just want to put it out there that it's not me. So then Mary was like, well, do you think it's Lisa, Bronwyn? Like, do you think it's Lisa? And Bronwyn was just like, I would just be really bothered if somebody in this group did that. You know, she's like, I'm just saying that things amped it up after Amy's party, and I got into a lot of fights there. And so then Bronwyn basically says, you know, I thought me and you cleared things up, Lisa. And she was like, we had a sit down and we talked. And Lisa said, yeah, we good. And Lisa's like, I feel like you trying to accuse me of something. Okay. And then Bronwyn was like, well, all I'm saying is I'd be really devastated if we sat down and like you are the person that is spreading this information. You know what I mean? And so then Lisa's getting irritated. She's like, you know what? Let's just go jump in the water because I'm done with this. And here's the thing. I just think Lisa is super defensive because she already knows that they are gunning for her this season. Because if I was her, I wouldn't have said nothing. And if I were to say something, I would have told Bronwyn, yes, we had a conversation, especially when she brought up, like, we had a conversation. I'm not the only person in the state of Utah that don't like you. Like, I would have been like, we've had our issues and you're telling me I'm the only person that's fought with you in such a way that I would be the culprit of spreading this information. Like, it's not It's not computing, girl. But Lisa is reactionary. And when she feels like something is about to happen, instead of just letting it sit so she can observe the situation, she reacts. Because I'm like, yeah, girl, you are kind of making it easy for them to pin this stuff on you by automatically getting defensive and being like, I don't think nobody would do that. Because nobody else in the group was talking. Everybody else was allowing Heather Meredith to like question Bronwyn about what was going on. You should have just let that play out. And I know I talked about this in one of the spicy corners that on Watch What Happens Live, Lisa basically said that Bronwyn said she thought it was Whitney. And then that's when she said, I don't think nobody would do that. Now, I don't know if that truly happened. Maybe they might show it to us in unforeseen footage. But because I was actually surprised that Andy did not ask Bronwyn on Watch What Happens Live, like, is Lisa telling the truth that you said Whitney's name? So maybe they're holding that for the reunion. But either way, if I was Lisa, I wouldn't be defending nobody on that boat. I would not say nothing. I would have been mute, quiet. So pretty much Lisa is in her confessional saying like, I'm tired of being the scapegoat. Like I'm sick of doing that all the time. And that's also a reaction to that happening too. If you're somebody that feels like everyone is always accusing you of stuff, you do get very defensive very easily. So I was just like, I get that, Lisa, but again, you should have been quiet. You should just been quiet. So you hear Lisa say, I don't like how that got spun, but it really didn't get spun. You just made it easy for them to accuse you of something because you got mad defensive. So we see the girls playing in the ocean. Like I said. We see this conversation that happens between Heather and Britani, where Heather basically tells Britani that she slept with Captain Jason. And Britani is like, what, you did? And all that was to me was Heather trying to rub it in Britani's face that she slept with someone that she's interested in, and she wanted to flex. And she also wanted us to know that somebody that she believes is very attractive thought she was attractive enough to sleep with. I thought it was lame. I thought it was pathetic, and I thought it was corny because honestly, I don't like when men who are not in relationships with partners kiss and tell. So I don't like when women do it either, because I'm just like, if they don't want that out there, you don't need to be talking, especially with him being at work. So I was just like, Heather, you only did that because you wanted us to be like, ooh, look at Heather. Because then in the confessional, she's like, I said that with a straight face. Like, delete it. You can't use that. And I'm like, girl, you knew they were going to use it. That's why you said it, because you wanted it to be known. That's it. That's all. Now you gonna be embarrassed if that man get on TV saying, I don't know what she talking about. Me and her ain't never slept together, so you should have kept it to yourself. Okay? So we then have this gag that I thought was actually funny, is they had this inflatable swan, and Lisa kept calling it a duck, but every time she called it a duck, they posted like a graphic of a swan getting angrier and angrier and angrier. That was funny to me. We see that Angie is really sick. She started throwing up on the paddle boat, and I said, ooh, girl, you gonna be down for the count for a while. So we see everybody get back onto the boat after watching Angie throw up. And Lisa basically says, no more boats for you, Angie. And then she says in her confessional, Angie's so full of herself, she making herself sick. And I thought that was kind of funny. And I said, point for you, Lisa. Okay, that was actually clever. Okay. So we then see Whitney and Bronwyn in Britani's room. And Bronwyn wants to show Whitney the unicorn, or Jared the unicorn. And when she plays the audio, the way that you could tell that Whitney got the ick, she was like, girl, like she was disgusted, and I would be too. We then see this scene of Britani trying to flirt with Mike, one of the workers of the yacht that we saw earlier in the episode, who was passing out shots to everyone. And he's making casual conversation with her, basically like, so what do you do for a living? And she's like, I build and I sell. I build and I sell. And he's looking at her like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And she's like, I build and I sell. I said, girl, why didn't you just tell him you're a real estate agent and you help build developments or build certain houses and homes and then you sell them? He was so confused, and I would be confused too, okay? So then we see Whitney and Bronwyn have a conversation where Bronwyn is basically bringing up Lisa, saying that nobody in the group would do this. No one has ever done this. And she's like, because it's her. That's why she said what she said. And Whitney was like, yeah, it is her. And then Bronwyn was like, isn't she the one that broke the Alibaba story last year? Heather. And Whitney is like, yeah. And she was like, that's what made me think it was her. And it was obvious. But the thing about the Alibaba story is that it was not Lisa. Up in Adam, the actual blogger we heard on the episode, came out and said that Whitney was lying. That he never told Whitney that it was Lisa, that he could not verify that it was Lisa putting out that information. So it's like, y'all be accusing people, but y'all don't ever have like factual receipts, okay? So then Bronwyn said what really made her think it was Lisa is because the person keeps calling her Conwyn, not Bronwyn. And she was like, and when she was at Amy's and her and Amy were getting into it, she was like, she called me that. And then they flash back to Amy's and Lisa called her Fraudwyn. She didn't call her Conwyn. So then they flash across the screen the Bravo derm and what they've been calling her, which is Conwyn Fraudport. So they post a tweet that dates back all the way to March the 17th, and it says this thing I just put together that I'm going to post about hashtag Conwyn Fraudport later today is so damning. She and her little trolls aren't going to be able to wiggle their way out of this one. It makes everything else I ever revealed about her look like child's play. Hashtag RHOSLC. Then the next tweet that they post says this: in addition to the forgery charge in Utah, hashtag Conwyn Fraudport was apparently charged with grand theft and identity theft in California. Noticing some patterns, I am. Hashtag RHOSLC. So then they start saying it's not like Lisa not to ever try to hide things behind other people. So it's definitely giving that it's her, So she was like, she's done this to everybody in this group. That's what Bronwyn is saying. So she believes that it's Lisa. So then we see Whitney run to her room with Heather and she was like, we need to get Meredith on this. And says, like, I agree that Lisa is the leak. She was like, Lisa is a lot smarter and darker than any of us have ever imagined. She's like, I think she looks everything up. And she was like, and I think she's pissed at Bronwyn because of her attitude. And she's very interested in knowing Bronwyn's history. And this is my thing. This is how I'm saying, this is why I keep saying this is not accountability. This is just y'all wanting to punish this lady. Because accountability from people who claim to be your friends, nobody who claims to be your friend would think that you are a dark and malicious person. Because if I thought somebody was dark and malicious, I would not give a damn about accountability. I wouldn't want to be friends with you. But Heather keeps contradicting herself by saying in one breath, I want to be your friend. I am your friend. I'm your buddy, Lisa. But then also you're a moron and you're a dark and evil person. What kind of shit is that? That's weird. Like, that is weird. Okay. I don't care what nobody says. That is weird behavior. All right. So then Heather's in the confessional talking about, like, Lisa and Bronwyn have been going back and forth for a long time. It was Lisa that spoke to Emma. No, Emma reached out to Lisa. And then Heather's like, I've seen Lisa ask people about Bronwyn, and they do flash back to Amy's party, and you do see Lisa asking Amy about Bronwyn. She was like, are you and her cool? Did y'all friends like that? And then they also flash back to Angie saying that Lisa encouraged her to get information on people. And then they flash back to when Meredith asked Lisa about, did you tell Angie to dig up this information? So she was like, it's undeniable that Lisa is the leak. And she was like, we need to get Meredith on this so that we can have a conversation, because I don't want to destroy my friendship with Lisa. Girl, you don't care about that friendship with Lisa. So then as the conversation continues, we actually see Whitney like flip out of bed and run and go get Meredith. Meredith basically says that, like, I would hope Lisa is not doing this, but she's not taking the bait of trying to go against Lisa or isolate Lisa. She basically says all of this seems like it's just correlations. Like, she was like, I would hope Lisa is not doing these things, but like, if y'all don't got proof, then it is what it is. But this is why I say it's also a takedown season, because why are you trying to get Lisa isolated? Because right now the only person she has on this boat with her is Meredith. The rest of y'all don't really rock with her like that. So why do you want Meredith to be mad at her? And I think what's pissing them off is Meredith is not taking the bait. Like, Meredith is very much like, girl, I see what y'all are saying, but I'm not going for it. And it's bothering them. So, it is dinner time, okay? We find out that Angie and Mary are not going to be coming because Mary is trying to make sure her friend is okay, because Angie is trying to be revived by ice packs on her legs. I said, "Ooh, girl, you are really down for the count." So Mary's a good one because there's no way I would have been in that room eating my food while my friend is vomiting. Like, vomit has a particular smell to it. On top of that, if I'm eating something and then I see you get up, run to the bathroom, and I hear it going into the toilet, it's going to be two people in that bathroom throwing up together. I would have had to eat my food in a separate room and then just come sit with her after that because I couldn't do it. So we see the rest of the ladies about to sit down to have dinner. And then we actually see Heather tell them, look, Angie and Mary are not going to be coming. Angie's sick. And they're like, oh, okay. So then as they're eating and drinking their, their food and stuff like that, next thing you know, you hear Heather say, oh, I'm going to really miss Mary's commentary for tonight. And Brittany was like, I don't miss it. She was like, I do not miss it. And so you see Bronwyn and Heather make a face. So then Heather says, Brittany, we have a rule. You can only talk crap about somebody when they're in front of you. I said, is this a new rule? Because y'all dog walk Lisa episode 1 and y'all are constantly talking poorly about each other behind each other's backs. So when did this happen? When did this come about? Okay. So then Brittany is like, I'm the only one that says what I feel to people's faces. So then Bronwyn takes it upon herself to be like, what about the things you're not saying to people's faces? And I said, Bronwyn, why you got all this bass in your voice for Brittany? Like, I know you don't like the lady, but I'm like, she ain't really done nothing in this moment to you. So what we mad about? Like, why are we throwing her under the bus? So we find out a week ago that Brittany and Bronwyn were at like this thrift store, and pretty much Brittany was like in the dressing room and they were having a conversation where Bronwyn asks Brittany how she's doing and who she's cool with in the group. And then Brittany ends up saying she feels like Lisa is trying too hard to like big sister her. She was like, I don't need that. I don't need her to fight my battles. I can fight my own. Then she brings up Meredith, where she basically says she feels like Meredith always is having some seizure or some sort when it comes to her. And you see Bronwyn is like gagged as she said that. She's like, girl, for real? She says, I don't know why Meredith goes from 0 to 100. And then Bronwyn lies and tries to say, well, I think Meredith has been very supportive towards you. And Brittany was like, no, she hasn't, which she's not lying. So while they're sitting at the table, Bronwyn takes it upon herself to just throw Brittany under the bus completely, where she's like, Lisa, she told me that you big sister her, you're always in her business, and she don't want you in her business. And she's like, Meredith, and she told me that you pretend to have seizures and that you slur your words, you go from 0 to 100, and it's always over nothing, and she thinks it's an act. She was like, she doesn't believe that anything that's coming out of your mouth is true. And I'm like, why you lie on her like that? Because to be honest, Brittany never said that lady slurs her words, and she never said that she feels like what's her name? Meredith be pretending to have seizures. She says that she thinks that she be having these moments of seizures and that she goes from 0 to 100. And I was like, ooh, but I don't really feel that bad for Brittany, because I'm like, Brittany, you're being stupid thinking that Bronwyn is your friend. You don't even really like Bronwyn like that. So why do you think that she likes you like that when this is the second time that she has done this to you? She threw you under the bus at Meredith's bat mitzvah last season, and she's doing it right now. So acting like that girl really cares about you is wild, when it seems like at every opportunity she takes the time to like dig at you. She did it on the first episode when you were arguing with Whitney and you were using your hands to talk, and she was like, keep your hands over there or we're gonna have a problem. She made fun of you when y'all were at the wine tasting with Whitney's, where she was like, hey, this lady's been calling me a gold digger and look at what she's doing. Like, she don't like you, Brittany. So I don't know why you would ever confide in her. Like, that's stupid. Okay. So Brittany is looking like dejected, where she was like, I didn't say that like that. So then Meredith ends up saying, that's a horrible thing to say. That's a horrible thing to say, that people are having seizures or that I'm pretending to have seizures, especially when my child has had a seizure. And so then Brittany tries to explain herself to Meredith, and Meredith's like, I don't care. I said, ooh. Meredith is about to have a moment. So then Brittany's like, here, this is what I'm talking about, the seizures. And so then politely, Meredith gets up and dumps her drink in Brittany's lap. And I said, that was the most politest way I've seen somebody do a drink toss. Granted, I do think Meredith was wrong. Like, she shouldn't have poured her drink on Brittany. Like, girl... Let's keep our hands and liquids to ourselves, okay? So then Brittany gets up trying to throw it back at Meredith. When I tell you Meredith deflected that thing, like she just, I said, oh, waterbender. Like everybody said, she's a waterbender, y'all. She hit that glass quick and Bronwyn got wet and she deserved it. Because there was no reason for you to throw Brittany under the bus, Bronwyn. And my thing about it is with Bronwyn is she thinks she's better than Brittany. Like the spirit of Muzzy comes out in Bronwyn when Brittany is around. And I think it's also because Bronwyn knows that Brittany is the lowest on the totem pole. So she enjoys like kicking her down because she can do that. Because I've noticed when Bronwyn argues with Brittany, she the big girl, she the big dog. Like she be so condescending and so demeaning towards Brittany, and she raises her voice. But when she's with Lisa, all of a sudden she's a victim and she's crying and she's like, I'm done with you. But she don't do that with Brittany because she thinks she's better than Brittany and she thinks she has more pull than Brittany. And granted, she does because she's a full-time housewife and Brittany is a friend. But I'm like, girl, I see you, Bronwyn. So then Brittany's in the confessional basically saying that no one's batting an eye that this lady just threw a drink on her. And I said, girl, that should tell you how this group feels about you. They don't really like you like that. Even the people that you think are your friends really aren't your friends because they didn't try to stop Meredith or tell Meredith that she was wrong. So then Meredith was like, you're saying that I have seizures. She was like, what you said is disgusting and it's disgraceful. And then Brittany says, I'm the only one that's not afraid of Meredith. So then you see one of the crew members, I think it is Mike, trying to vacuum up the water, and you hear the vacuum going, and they're still arguing with each other. And then you see Brittany in the confessional making fun of Meredith's voice, and then it's just like, Brittany, you're not going to get nowhere with Meredith because she don't like you. You see Angie and Mary listening to them argue, and they're like, oh my God, what's going on? What is going on? And they're like, girl, it's too much. It's too much. It's too much. So then we end up seeing this conversation once everyone kind of calms down, where Heather is pretty much saying, like, you know, I don't want this to be a pile on. We're adult women. We're privileged women. We're living our best lives. We should be able to have these types of conversations, and it should not escalate to that. So then Meredith is like, I don't feel like I'm being piled on. She was like, Bronwyn is supporting me and Lisa is supporting me. So I don't feel like this is a pile on. So then you hear Whitney bring up, like, we should talk about the conversation that we had, me, you, and Meredith. She was like, we need to talk about it. And so then Meredith was like, yeah, you guys do need to talk about it because I was a part of that conversation, but y'all are the ones that pulled me into it. So Heather feels some type of way because she feels like Meredith should be helping have this conversation. She was like, you know, I'm trying to have this conversation with Lisa, and I thought Meredith would help me with it. Why do you need help from Meredith? If you really think Lisa is doing this, you should be able to have this conversation on your own, Heather. So then pretty much Heather says, I don't care about anybody that's not at this table. Lisa's just sitting there. And she was like, honestly, I'm just going to go out and say it. I think you are the source of all this dirt, Lisa. Barman is like, and I'm like, Brian, why are you acting like you're so shocked when just a couple of hours ago you were in the cabin saying that you think Lisa is the cause of all of this? So Lisa is taken aback, like, are you serious? She's like, no, I'm not. Like, she's like, I'm not. Whitney is gleefully smiling like, yeah, get her. And so she's like, why are y'all questioning me? She was like, are you serious? Like, what are you talking about? So then Lisa tells Meredith, girl, you better have had my back when they were having that conversation. Because if you didn't, I'm going to be pissed at you. You better have had my back. Because she was like, I hope you told them that it was not true. And Meredith was like, no, I told them that they needed to have a conversation with you because I don't believe what they're saying. So then Heather starts yelling, saying, we don't have to have, like, she doesn't have to have your back. We're going to have this conversation. So then Lisa's like, what y'all are saying is not effing true. She was like, I am not the source of everything. I'm not. And so then Meredith says, I don't think you are the one that was feeding anything to the blogs, Lisa. And then Heather is like, you're the grand poobah of Salt Lake City. This reminds me of when Angela said that Phaedra was the grandfather of Atlanta last season of Real Housewives of Atlanta. So then Lisa's like, yeah, I'm the mother effing Don of Salt Lake City. Are you serious? So then Lisa's like, I'm so sick of them trying to pin everything on me. Like, I'm sick of these bitches. Like, I'm sick of it. She was like, girl, anytime I go somewhere, someone's telling me stuff. I go to Hamron's, someone's telling me something. I go get a Diet Coke, somebody's telling me something, but I'm not out here spreading this information. So effing take y'all constantly saying that it is me, because it's not me. So then Whitney gets up to try to like talk to Lisa. I don't know why Whitney is always getting up to get in Lisa's face. Like, get back from that lady. So Lisa's like, Whitney, do not come near me. Don't come near me. And she's like, no, I'm coming near you, Lisa. So then Lisa gets up and goes to Heather, and she was like, are you serious? Like, you really think? She grabs Heather's face, which I thought she was about to choke her. I said, y'all are really handsy, okay? And she was like, if you really think I'm that person, then are you serious, Heather? So Heather's like, sit down. We have to have this conversation. And so Lisa's like, y'all called me a cheater. Y'all said that I was Jen Shaw. She was like, I have not done anything to y'all that warrants this behavior. Now, Lisa, we're going to have to call a thing a thing. Two people on this show that have legitimate gripes with you is Mary and Meredith. That hot mic moment, which I didn't think was a hot mic moment for Meredith, and you bringing that cameraman on the show that later passed away that was saying that Mary's church was a cult. Those are the only two people on this show that I feel like have legitimate gripes with Lisa. Legit. Everybody else, it's like, y'all were doing stuff to each other, in my opinion, okay? Because some of this stuff, I'm just like, girl, you also do the stuff that you're accusing her of doing. So then Lisa is like crying. Heather is like, you know, we're going to talk about this. And then Lisa's like, you better have defended me, Meredith. Like, she's going off. And so Heather's like, don't be afraid of her, Meredith. Don't be afraid. She's just trying to throw her weight around. And so Lisa's like, no. Then you have the crew trying to feed them more food. And I said, girl, just put the food down and walk away. Just put the food down and walk away. So Lisa is screaming. She's going off. And then Heather's like, you know all the dirt, Lisa. And she was like, yeah, I know everything. She was like, girl, great. She was like, just say it, Lisa. Just say it. And Lisa's like, all that information is out there. Grand larceny and theft is out there. I'm not the one. So then it was weird when Heather got mad at Lisa, when Lisa was like, if you think I did this, then I totally can't be your friend. And she's like, are you effing kidding me, Lisa? And I'm looking at Heather like, why would you want to be friends with somebody that you think is out here spreading dirt on y'all? Like, you're weird. Like, that's weird. Like, are you serious? This is weird behavior from Heather, because there's no way I would be friends with someone who I legitimately thought was out here digging up information and feeding it to the blogs. There's no way I would want to be friends with you. No way. So Heather is getting upset, and Lisa's like, I got accused of being the leak last year, and now y'all are doing it again. She was like, I don't know, you could be the leak. You could be the leak. She was like, I love how y'all like to spin stuff on me. And so then Heather's like, we're not spinning it on you, you stupid moron. I said, girl, that would have sent me. That would have, like, I promise y'all, if I was Lisa, the way that I would have been like, you know what? Got it. I would have promptly I wouldn't have called John. I would have went to that room, packed my bags. I would have told them, look, I don't want to be on this boat no more. In the morning, I need y'all to get me up on out of here. I don't want to talk to none of these women. I'm ready to go home. And I would have found the next hotel in Canaco, and then I would have chartered a flight, and I would have went home. Because what we not doing is this. What we not doing is this. So then Heather ends up saying like, you're going to say this stuff to my face? You're going to say this stuff to my face? And Lisa's like, you got the wrong girl, because I didn't do that. Then she's like, get the F off this yacht then, if you're going to say that to my face. And I said, oh, okay. So then Lisa gets up. Meredith is trying to calm Lisa down. And Lisa's like, you know what? You really want me to leave, Heather? Okay, then I'm done. The chef comes in trying to like explain the food that he gave to them. And then he just gives up and walks away. And then Lisa's like, I've never done anything to y'all to warrant this behavior. So then Lisa's on the phone trying to call John. And she's like crying to him saying, John, like, I'm ready to go home. Like, and you can tell that she's really worked up because she's hyperventilating as she's speaking. Like, she's losing breath. And she's like, like, I'm ready to go. Heather, get out of my face. Get out of my face. And Heather's like, I'm your friend. And Lisa's like, no, you're not. She was like, go talk to your other buddies. And Heather's like, I'm your buddy, Lisa. Girl. And so then she kept grabbing Lisa. When I tell you, I'd have punched Heather because there's only but one time I need to tell you to take your hands up off me. If I tell you to get away from me, okay? Get away from me. I done told you to get away from me. Get away from me. And don't touch me, okay? And so Lisa's like trying to pull away from her. She's crying to John. Heather is following her saying, Lisa, we have to talk about this. No, y'all don't. And so then Heather gets mad at Lisa because Lisa doesn't want to speak to her. And I'm like, girl, that display that you just showed you're not that lady's friend. So why of course she's upset. So then we see the workers, the crew, like being like, girl, they ripping each other's heads off up there. Like, it's crazy. It goes to Angie and Mary's room, and she's crying, and she's like, I had to do it. And they're like, Heather, you're so brave. You're so strong. It needed to be said. I was like, ew, this feels so gross to me. And so then we see Britani flirting with Captain Jason, and he not really into it. So then you see Lisa on this like floating little barge that's attached to the boat. She's on the phone to John saying like, I want to go home. Like, I'm going to get a hotel. I want to go home. So then Heather is looking for Lisa. Britani tells Heather that Lisa is on the raft, and Britani was trying to touch Lisa, and Lisa was like, girl, don't touch me. If I would probably would have pushed her in the ocean. Don't touch me. Like, I'd have been like, don't touch me, or I'm going to shove you in the ocean. Do not touch me, lady. And like, get away from me. And so you see Whitney going around the kitchen looking at stuff, and Lisa's just crying. It was a beautiful shot of all the fish around her. And then she's like, I'm ready to go. Like, I can't stand these women. I'm ready to go home. That wasn't accountability. Because there's no way you call somebody your friend and you do something like that to them. Because if Heather really wanted Lisa to be held accountable, she would have sat her down with Meredith, because she wants Meredith to be there. And Meredith is Lisa's friend, and Heather is supposed to be Lisa's friend. Maybe Mary could have been a part of the conversation, because it seems like Mary can sometimes get to Lisa. And then they would have had a conversation with her about her behavior. That's how you hold somebody accountable, when you create a safe space for them. That right there was just a public lashing. And no one that calls themselves your friend would do that to you. They wouldn't. And if they call themselves your friend and they do that to you, girl or boy who watched this, or if you don't even identify with that person, they don't like you. They do not like you. They want to humiliate you, because there is no way Heather would have been in my face. There's no, I guarantee you, we would have fought on that boat. like hands would have been thrown, because one, I told you, do not touch me. Don't touch me. Like, my 5'2" ass would have popped you real quick, faster than this, okay? Real fast and heavy. All right, y'all. So episode 8, it opens up and we see Bronwyn decided to sleep on the deck because her and Britani are not in a good place. I thought she was being overly dramatic, because that yacht was big enough where you could have just slept in like that. I guess it would be the common area where the women were getting like drinks and stuff like that. Girl, there was like a sofa in there. Like, I just feel like she was just being dramatic. I was like, girl, what are we doing? Okay. Like, it's not that deep. But pretty much we end up seeing a few of the crew members notice her sleeping there. And when she wakes up, they're like, hey, can we get you anything? And she's like, a water and a Dr. Pepper. So then we end up seeing a conversation that happens between Whitney and Heather in their cabin, where Heather's trying to act like she don't know what happened the night before. But mind you, you ask her about it, she talks about it. So she knows what happened the night before. So then Whitney basically was like, you were a baller last night. When I tell you, I giggled so hard because she sounded so lame to me, because it reminded me of, that clip that goes viral like almost every year of that white lady trying to teach people how to do hip hop, where she's like, you see how I'm walking like this? That's hip hop. That's what it reminded me. I said, Whitney, I have not heard anybody say baller, I feel like, since elementary school, like the early 2000s. Like, I was like, girl, what? So she was like, you were such a baller the night before. So then Heather starts talking about how, like, Lisa is our good friend. And I was like, she's not your good friend because y'all don't really like her. But she says she doesn't want Lisa to keep, like, this scoreboard of their relationships, like counting their money or, counting their misdeeds. Mind you, they all do that. But I'm like, okay, if that's what we're harping on, that's what we're harping on. So then she's like, if Lisa wants to be a friend, she needs to be a friend. Like, you got to be a friend, pretty much. So then Whitney brings up how long they were sitting on that inflatable. Mind you, beautiful scene, like everyone has said, of Lisa sitting there, the water so blue with the fish and things of that nature. But like, it's equally as terrifying. I like, one of my favorite documentaries is Blue Planet. And one thing I love about Blue Planet is they don't mince words about how dangerous the ocean is. They also express how, like, maybe we've gotten more coverage of the ocean. I don't think by much. But when I used to watch the documentary series, I think they said only 5% of the ocean has been discovered. The other 95%, we don't know what's out there. Because the ocean is so deep and we would be crushed under the pressure of going that deep. We saw what happened to the ocean gate. Like, nobody knows what's down there. And I'm also like, when you're in the ocean, legit, you can't see what's coming towards you, what's behind you, or what's coming from the side of you, or what's coming up underneath you. Like, by the time you know it's there, you're dead. Okay? And so they were just sitting there, and I was like, that water is dark. Okay, you don't know if what is looking. There could be some Lovecraftian, like, eldritch horror, like, just staring at y'all, waiting to just take you. So I was just like, get off the raft for a minute. Wait until the water is, wait till the sun out and you can see in the water, okay? But still a pretty scene. So we see that Lisa and Heather had a conversation where Lisa is basically like, I'm going home. And Heather's like, no, you're not. And Lisa's like, yes, I am, girl. So we see the girls on the raft, Lisa and Heather, and Lisa's like, I'm going home. She's still crying and hyperventilating. Heather's like, no, the F you're not. And Lisa says, don't ever try to ask me to admit to something that I never did or would never do. And then Heather's like, but I think you're a source of all the dirt. And Lisa's like, no, I'm not, Heather. And she's like, I would never do that. How would I know how to do that? Like, how, Heather? And Heather's like, because everybody tells you everything. And I was like, that's not really a great argument. And the only reason why I say that is, as somebody in college who everyone would tell them everything, people told me stuff because I didn't run my mouth. Like, people would tell me things and they knew I would not talk about them. So, like, if people are constantly going to Lisa to tell her stuff, that somewhat would mean that, like, she don't really be running her mouth like that. But also the flip side could be, like, they tell her stuff because they know she runs her mouth. But I'm just like, again, y'all don't have proof of her doing these things, so it doesn't work for me, okay? So next thing you know, she's like, yes, people tell me stuff, but I'm not leaking it. She was like, I don't know why y'all are trying to blame me for everything. So she's getting worked up and she's like, are you effing kidding me right now? So then in the confessional, I feel like Heather was moving the goalpost because in one breath, she's saying all Lisa had to do was admit it and we could move forward. But then she switches up by saying, or she could have just said, I've done things in the past and then we could move forward. I just wanted her to take accountability for something. And I'm just looking at her like, but if she has not done those things, then why are you expecting her to just acquiesce and admit to it? I'm also like, you did not present any like proof of saying, hey, this is why we think you did it, other than speculation. So why would she ever admit to that? It just feels like this is their way of trying to be like, this is how we're going to get her. But it's not working for a lot of people because it's like, y'all are dogpiling on her, but you don't have proof. You don't have evidence. And it's like, the reason why people rock with y'all so hard with Monica is because you had proof. You had evidence, you don't have it. The receipts, the timelines, everything. You don't have it, Heather. So why would she admit to that? Whether she did it or not, like, I wouldn't admit to it because it's like, girl, you don't got no proof. So then it goes back to them being in the cabin. And she's like, I hope our friendship can withstand what happened. You know, she's like, Heather's like, I'm hoping with the space between us today that maybe we can assess the damage of our friendship once we pretty much get back to Utah. So then Whitney ends up saying, well, how do we move forward with her when we know she's doing these things, but she keeps denying it? So then Heather ends up saying, I think you just have to refrain from the friendship and just know that it will never be what it's supposed to be or could have been because you don't trust that person. So then the scene switches to Meredith and Lisa. And Lisa is basically still reeling from the night before. And she was like, literally, like last night, she was like, it was so effing ugly. She was like, I learned how nasty and ugly people can be. She was like, nothing about what happened the night before was normal. She was like, those questions were not questions. She was like, that's not friendship, you know? She was like, it's all bullshit. So then in the confessional, she was like, I'm hoping everybody wakes up feeling awful for the way that they behaved the night before, you know? Then Lisa gets mad at Meredith, which I was like, you should not be getting mad at Meredith because Meredith has been holding you down this entire season, girl. This entire season. So then Lisa points out, she's like, you know, it's the fact that no one told them like this was wrong. Like, and then Meredith was like, Lisa, what are you talking about? She was like, just because I don't say things the way you want me to say them or I don't behave the way you want me to, I defended you last night. She was like, and I supported you. She was like, I don't know how else I can support you anymore. And she ends up saying, you saying that I didn't support you actually makes me angry and it hurts my feelings. And I think Meredith has a point. Like, girl, she been defending you. Because they been coming for your neck since episode 1. And Meredith has had your back. So if I was Lisa, I would not be trying to push Meredith to the side. I can understand her frustrations of feeling like, girl, I needed somebody to really like get in the trenches with me. But you know Meredith isn't like that. So what she did is what she was always going to do. So I don't get the whole, like, you didn't really help me out when she really did help you out, girl. So then we get this scene of Bronwyn explaining why in which she decided to sleep on the deck. She basically says that, you know, Brittany was mad at her for throwing her under the bus, and she's just mad at Brittany for running her mouth in general. Like, she's irritated by it. But that doesn't make sense to me because Bronwyn is trying to position herself like Brittany was just, like, telling her information that she didn't want to hear. Yet you went shopping with her, and you were leading the conversation. You were egging it on to get her to say more stuff. Now, Brittany should have been smart enough to see the play, but she didn't. And I'm just like, what are you mad about, Bronwyn? So then next thing you know, they show us a flashback of them arguing in the cabin, and then we actually see Bronwyn with a pillow underneath her arm in her pajamas that we saw her in the beginning of the episode wear, and she walks past a sofa that's covered to go sleep on the deck. And that's why I think it's actually she was being dramatic and wanted attention, because girl, there were so many options on this huge yacht where you could have been like, oh, let me just sleep here where it's covered and I'm comfortable. Like, okay, girl. So we then get this scene of like, it was Angie, Whitney, Brittany, Heather, and Lisa. And it was awkward. Okay. The silence was awkward and very like, not, what's the word? It was intentional, and it said a lot without saying a lot. So you see the ladies, they're on the mid deck and they're like all sitting around, and Lisa's like, guess who's back from the dead, or look who's back from the dead. And I don't know if she was saying that about herself or if she was saying that about Angie, but they all just looked at her when she sat down. Like, it was so awkward. And then they immediately, the three of them, Angie, Whitney, and Heather, get up and they're like, we're going to go get breakfast. We're going to see how they're doing breakfast. Then they're like fumbling, trying to open the door. And you could tell that Lisa was kind of caught off guard that they didn't say anything to her. So she was like, oh, okay. So then we see a conversation take place between Brittany and Lisa, where Brittany ends up asking Lisa, so how are you after what happened last night? And Lisa's like, you know, I'm okay. She was like, have you spoken to Heather? And Lisa says, you know, me and Heather talk. I loved her, but what happened the other day was not okay. And this really puts into perspective for me why Lisa was crying on Watch What Happens Live when Andy asked her about her feelings about Heather, is because it does really seem like Lisa considered Heather like her friend, like her actual friend. And I'm just like, ooh, girl. That gotta hurt. like to know that someone's been plotting on you since season 1 and now they're enacting revenge and you really thought that person was your friend. So then while they're sitting there, Britani brings up her relationship with Bronwyn. She was like, I thought me and Bronwyn were in a good spot. And then she pulled what she did the other day. So we see Bronwyn on the deck at the top. And she's just like, I can hear you, Britani. Like, this isn't going to help. And then you hear Britani say, she asked me to go on a shopping trip. So Bronwyn asked Britani to go shopping with her. Britani, you should have saw the plot right there, the setup right there. And she's like, we were talking, things were really nice. And then she does this. But then you hear, what's her name? Lisa tell her, well, you're responsible for allowing this to happen, Britani, because she did this to you last year. And I was like, yeah, girl, she did, Britani. Like, that lady don't like you. And Bronwyn is the type of person that if the group don't like you, then she not gonna like you. So I would never think that y'all's relationship was that like locked in to ever think that you could trust her enough to say those types of things or to confide in her. Because at the end of the day, she don't really see it for you, girl. She don't see it. So then, Lisa just tells her, like, the bottom line is, she says, I've never done anything to Bronwyn like that. She was like, even when she went around and lied and said that I sought out the grandparents and that I was hurting her daughter. So Bronwyn, is really now she's seriously, like, ear hustling, listening to the conversation. So Brittany's like, wait, she asked you to talk to the family? And so they show a text message. Now, this is what the text message says. It says, hi, Gwen and I talked, and if you wouldn't mind reaching out to blank blank and explaining this came up, G is willing to meet if they are. Sorry to put you in the middle, but I know you offered and maybe the best way to approach them. And then Lisa texted her back saying, I'm happy to. Now, Bronwyn asked because, Lisa, you offered. Now, maybe if you had not offered, she would not have, asked you to do that. But also I'm looking at Bronwyn like I wouldn't have gotten Lisa involved. But I do get where Lisa is coming from, where she's kind of like, they made it seem like I went out of my way to speak to these people when I offered and she pretty much said, yes, go ahead and talk to them people, okay? So then you see Angie and Mary talking to Bronwyn. They're on the upper deck now. And so Bronwyn is telling them all the stuff that she can hear them saying. She's like, they down there talking trash about me. Let's move out the way before I get upset. So we see them go sit at the table where they have been having like dinner, breakfast, and lunch. And pretty much they're like, girl, what happened? While, we was out of commission the night before. And so pretty much Bronwyn basically says that she reached out and said, like, Britani, like, let's go shopping together. She said, while we went shopping, Britani basically said that Meredith has seizures. And then I, told them what she said. And she was like, Britani got furious with me. And she said I threw her under the bus and things of that nature. And it is what it is. And then the night went on from there. So Angie's like, all of that happened while we were while I was vomiting for 18 hours. And they're like, yeah. So then next thing you know, you hear Bronwyn say, so I'm sitting here and I hear Lisa and her talking trash about me. And it's like, to what end? So then you end up seeing Meredith, Heather, and Whitney, and then Bronwyn. So we see the rest of the ladies filtering in to get breakfast. While they're sitting down at the breakfast table, Heather ends up telling them that pretty much they're going to this place called Tobago Keys where you can go like swimming, snorkeling, and sunbathing. So everyone's excited. We then see Bronwyn end up asking Mary and Angie, can she sleep in their room? And Mary's like, girl, no. No, ma'am. Figure it out with Britani. Britani is like, Bronwyn, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. So, like, you can come back to the room. And Bronwyn was like, well, I don't want to come back to a room where there's men coming in and out of it. And Britani was like, no one came in and out of the room. And so then Meredith chimes in and she's like, well, I did see Captain Jason go in there. And Britani was like, yeah, because he was fixing the thermostat. My thing about it is, and that's why I laughed when Bronwyn tried to say that Lisa was slut shaming her and she was being misogynistic. That's why I was like, all of y'all are misogynistic because y'all slut shame Britani all the time. Because I'm like, why are we trying to make it seem like that lady has like a revolving door of men coming in and out of y'all room? Y'all have only been there for one day. One day. So then Lisa chimes in and she was like, can we stop like dog piling on her? Like, let's not Captain Jason is not interested in her. Like, he's at work. Like, he don't want her. Like, I wouldn't want my name dragged through the mud like that when I'm not there. So then that sets Bronwyn off. So she starts yelling at Lisa, talking about, well, you were upstairs or downstairs, wherever they were, co-signing Britani calling me a steak. You also brought up my daughter's grandparents again. We said we weren't going to do that. Mary's in the confessional saying, here she go, talking about Bronwyn. And Bronwyn is just like, we said we weren't going to do that, Lisa. And so it flashes back to when they had that conversation at premiere about like not talking about each other's families and the kids and things of that nature. Lisa's like, I wasn't talking about your daughter. She was like, I didn't talk about the kids. Like, stop yelling at me. So then Bronwyn was like, don't you tell me not to yell at you. You yell at everybody, which is true because Lisa does yell at everybody. So then Bronwyn stands up and Lisa's like, girl, sit down. Stop deflecting. Just sit down. So then Mary's in her confessional saying, girl, she need to go. Like, she was like, Angie need to get sick again so we could go back to the room. So then Angie chimes in and she was like, well, Lisa, you do dig up dirt and you like spread rumors and do all this stuff. So then she brings up how when they were at premiere, after Lisa's failed, her luncheon / conference, that she told Angie that one of her friends was making out with Todd while he was farting. Bronwyn is like, what? She was like, did you really say that, Lisa? Did you say that? Did you say he was making out with people? She was like, F you. You're dead to me. I said, oh my God. So then Lisa says in her confessional, I grew up in New York and I know a lot of people. And she says, someone that I trust and believe came to me and told me about this information. And so she was like, I told Angie, not thinking that she was going to say anything. Because I'm also like, what did you say in that moment? Because this is the second time Angie has held on to information to use it for Mad Day to throw at Lisa. And y'all think she not going to do it to y'all eventually? Because it's coming. It's coming. Because if Angie does this to Mary, girl, nasty. That would be nasty work. So then Bronwyn was like, say, like, you really said that? So Lisa's like, I never said that. So then Bronwyn say you're wrong, Lisa. Take it back. So Lisa says, I was wrong for saying that about Todd. She was like, stop speaking on my family, Lisa. Gosh. So then Bronwyn's in her confessional saying, like, now I do believe Lisa is spreading the rumors and F her. And I said, okay, girl. And this is why I said the spirit of Muzzy is on Bronwyn when she's arguing with Britani, but when she gets to Lisa, all of a sudden she crying and she a victim because now she's sitting at the table like, I can't believe. And I'm looking at Bronwyn like, is it true? Because the aspect of this story about farting would make me feel like it's not true. Like, it would make me feel like Lisa was just lying and putting 20 on 10 by adding the farting part. And I'm just kind of like, Bronwyn, the reaction you're giving is that, girl, there might be some truth that man is still up in New York cheating on you. Like, because I did not expect that reaction from her. I did not, okay? So then Mary's in her confessional saying, I would be embarrassed if my husband was making out with somebody, but also farting. Like, what's wrong with his intestines? I said, girl, that's not the point of this. So then Angie ends up saying, don't talk about your friends like that, Lisa. And she was like, you're a horrible friend, Lisa. And Lisa's like, and you're a horrible friend, Angie. Deflect. And so Lisa leaves the table. So then you got Bronwyn sitting in the room and you can hear a voiceover of Todd. And now she's like, Todd was right. And she was like, Lisa wants me to be miserable, but the best thing I can do is just have a good time. She wants to hurt my family. My thing about Bronwyn is she cares too much about what Lisa thinks. Because honestly, I don't think Lisa cares that much about Bronwyn. I don't. And it's like, Bronwyn really cares because I'm like, I don't think Lisa cares if you have a good time or not, ma'am. I don't think she cares. And I don't. So for her to be like, the best thing I can do is have a good time, because that's what would make Lisa the most mad right now. No, it wouldn't. Because she don't care. So we see the ladies make it to Tobago Keys. Mind you, the way that boat was in the air, I said, girl, is it going to flip over? I said, this looked very unsafe. But they make it there. We see some of the women snorkeling. They're swimming. They had like a sea turtle, a couple of stingrays. I said, y'all really in the ocean. vibes, okay? So then we see a conversation take place between Angie and Bronwyn, where Angie apologizes to Bronwyn, saying that she feels awful about telling her that information and not really sticking up for her the way that she should have been, or not being a really good friend to her. She says that she tried to defend her against what's it called, Lisa, when she brought up Todd, but I don't believe that. I feel like Angie was fully engaged in that conversation and was being shady, okay? And so Bronwyn is like, I don't think she understands. Like, I'm over here contemplating whether I'm showing up properly, if I'm speaking disrespectfully, but she's over there getting a massage. Like, she doesn't give a crap. And so Angie says, no, you have to talk to her the way you did today, like very sternly. And my thing about it is, that's why I say Bronwyn cares too much. Because if when I don't care about, or I feel like it's intentionally trying to harm my family, I do not care about their feelings. I do not care if they feel remorseful or feel bad about what they're doing. Like, I don't like you, I don't care. Like, and it just seems as though Bronwyn still wants to have some type of connection with Lisa, even with the way that she speaks about her on Watch What Happens Live. Like, to me, switching up, saying that, I don't believe Lisa digs our posts, but she does encourage, makes me feel like you're trying to have this gray area of like, maybe she is putting out there, maybe she's not, but if we don't have proof, I can still say like I was in the middle and I didn't know because we weren't in a good place. But it just feels like she's trying to have this space where she could still be somewhat cool with her. Because it's weird to me. Like, if you feel like this person is attacking you and your family, why do you care if she feels bad about the things that she does? Like, why? Like, I wouldn't, So we then see this conversation happening with Mary and Lisa. Lisa basically tells Mary, like, did you hear us this morning? Like, I don't know if you heard us this morning. And she was like, I had a conversation with Meredith where she was like, I just feel like it bothers me that I don't feel as supported. And then Mary's like, well, do you feel like she shows up for you in other ways? And she's like, yeah, I do, but I feel like it's only privately, which is a lie because we've seen Meredith show up for Lisa publicly as well. So then we see Meredith come and sit down, and they tell Meredith that they're having a conversation about her. And Meredith is listening, and she's like, and Meredith was like, it's kind of weird to me that y'all care so much about our relationship or how we're interacting. And Mary is like, no, I'm not interested in how you guys engage. I just think it's slightly bizarre the way you guys engage. So then in the confessional, Mary basically says lately she does feel like Meredith does not stick up for Lisa, and that Meredith should probably speak up more or help her out if she really is her friend like that. And so Mary's like, oh my God, I'm over here like sticking up for Lisa Barlow. Lord help me. So then Meredith checks Lisa, which it was deserved, because Meredith was like, I feel like I've been pretty good with standing behind you and beside you. She was like, girl, when I disagree with you, I'll disagree. When I agree with what's happening or what you're doing, I will agree with you and I will be loud. Like, so I don't like this narrative that y'all are trying to shape, like I don't support you at all. But if you want me to like back up, I'll back up. I'll totally back up. So then Mary is like, well, Meredith, she's telling you that she doesn't feel like you're taking up for her and having her back. So then Meredith is like, Mary, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? You want me to do cartwheels? Like, what do you want me to do, Mary? And Mary was like, girl, you're not a good friend. You're not a good friend. You're just not. And then they start arguing about, like, Mary says, maybe you need to be a little bit more interesting because you're boring. And I was like, Mary, why do you have an attitude right now? Like, what is all this fever for Meredith right now? Okay. It didn't need to be like that, girl. So then Mary and Meredith going back and forth because Mary is telling Meredith that she's a snooze fest. And Mary's just like, I don't know what y'all want me to do. I'm doing what I can do and what I'm going to do. But I feel like Meredith is doing enough. Like, she hasn't thrown Lisa by the wayside. So I don't know what Lisa wants other than Lisa wants Meredith to be just as vocal, if not louder, and be like her. But that's not how Meredith operates. But also, this happened season 4 when everyone was trying to throw on Meredith that she was the one that was spreading the Sean is gay rumors. And Lisa wasn't sticking up for her then, and they were somewhat trying to mend their relationship. So it's like, what are you expecting from this lady? So we see Meredith walk away after getting into it with Mary. We then have this moment with Heather and Bronwyn where they're like walking on the beach. And Heather's in the confessional saying that, she feels really close to Bronwyn in this short amount of time. And, she's actually really embarrassed by the way that she acted before by judging her. And I was like, girl, if I was Bronwyn, I would not be friends with you based off of Heather's prior behavior. And the way that Heather's behaving now, to see somebody do a 180 on somebody whose ovaries they were sucking for 2 seasons straight. She was up Lisa's butt. Now all of a sudden she's cool with you. This also lends to me thinking like, yeah, y'all contemplated this. Or this is just Heather trying to distance herself completely from Lisa and jump on the Bronwyn and Angie bandwagon. Because I'm just looking at Heather like, girl, you're untrustworthy. You are an untrustworthy person. So they end up playing this game where they have to like run down the beach and like grab a drink and drink it. Britani face plants in the sand. Bronwyn is excited to see it, talking about she wants to mount it on her wall. They all said that they had a good time. And so we see them head back to the yacht. We then see what's her name? Bronwyn, Mary, and Angie. They're all in Angie and Mary's room. And we find out that Bronwyn brought her inflatables. And I think she had like 4 or 5. So she had a shark, and then she had a a seahorse. And I don't know how it happened, but Angie's finger gets caught in the door. It shuts on her finger and it slices her finger. And I did not think it was that bad until when she held up her hand, it was like blood, like a lot of blood. And I was like, golly, Angie, yachts are not for you. You had like seasickness, and then now all of a sudden you about to take off your fingers. Like, girl, get her off this yacht. And so Angie's in her confessional saying, I don't deserve this. I'm like the nicest person in the group. And I said, you're not, but you don't deserve your finger almost getting chopped off, because that was like a lot of blood. So we see everybody getting ready for zombie night. That is the theme of the night. And so Heather says, you know why we pick zombie night? Because we all love digging up dirt on each other. So then if y'all all love digging up dirt on each other, then why is Lisa the main one y'all are mad about? Okay, she says, and we love reconstructing old fights from the grave. So she was like, we definitely could have our own horror movie. And they called it The Gossip and Innuendos. So they're all sitting at the table and everyone's like dressed with like, some people have fake knives coming out of their head. I thought Bronwyn's outfit was kind of cool because it was a different take. She had like, what's it called? Like dead octopus coming out of her face. It reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean, the people who get, I think is it Davy Jones's curse? I think that's what, I ain't seen the movie in years, but that's what it reminded me of. And I thought it was cool. She had the octopus either on her face or on her head. So then while they're sitting at the table, we find out that Bronwyn decided to tell Todd and Gwen about what was happening on the trip. And I was like, mind you, didn't Todd tell you don't tell him nothing about what's happening between you and Lisa? Didn't he tell you that? But she was like, he wasn't really jazzed about what was said. And so then Heather was like, so you are telling me you told him about the making out and farting? And she's like, of course I did. Why should I be ashamed of it? And so Heather's like, you really told him that? And you can tell that Lisa's getting nervous because she's messing with her hair. But I feel like Bronwyn did that to like, Bronwyn is like weird in the sense to me that she thinks people are scared of Todd. Like, no one gives a damn about Todd. Like, no one cares. Like, you care about that old grumpy man because you sleeping with him and he your husband. But I feel like she said it in order to make Lisa uncomfortable, which I think it did work. But I was like, had this been any other cast, I don't think nobody would care. No one cares about the husbands like that. So she was like, I'm not the one that made it up. But I feel like if you thought it was made up, then why is it such a big deal? And so she goes on to say, I think Todd is always feeling like he's the punchline. And he was like, he doesn't understand why the partners are the punchline. But again, you brought up John earlier in the season. So why, like, what we doing? So she was like, I feel like Todd and Gwen need to be off limits. And so now she's directing her energy towards Lisa. She's like, I'm talking specifically to you, Lisa, because But she was like, I feel like you can't do that. So then Lisa ends up saying, I will not ever bring them up in any capacity. She was like, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings and I hurt Todd's feelings. So then Bronwyn says in the confessional, like, when someone is speaking, you should talk to them directly. But do I believe a lick of what Lisa is saying? No, I don't. So then Lisa says in her confessional, my intentions were not to hurt Bronwyn and Todd. She was like, I didn't have any plans of telling Angie so she could go back and humiliate Bronwyn. She was like, I don't do that type of stuff. Like, that's not my tactics. But if you open the door for it to happen, then it will happen. But that's not where I was coming from. She was like, I am genuinely sorry if I embarrassed her or hurt her. And so she ends up saying, like, I am sorry, Bronwyn. And so Mary was like, good job, Lisa. Because I don't think anybody expected her to apologize to Bronwyn or anything of that nature. So then all of a sudden, Heather brings up how the boat is really rocking. We see Britani get up and she goes and throws up off the side of boat because it's too much. So Britani comes and sits back down. Everyone's asking her, is she okay? She ends up taking a tequila shot. And I said, girl, that's going to make it worse. Okay. And Meredith was like, are you drinking tequila? Like, why are you drinking tequila? Brittany's like, Meredith, it's none of your business what I'm doing. Why do you care? And Meredith was like, you're right. I shouldn't care. But I don't understand why you're drinking tequila. Like, I would say that to anybody. Like, why would you do that? So then Britani was like, are you the expert in vomiting? And I said, ooh, not you going back to last season when you said Meredith was throwing up in her hotel room when y'all was in Mexico. I said, okay, Britani. And so, Britani then brings up this whole TikTok situation. The transition was weird to me because I was like, Britani, where are we going with this? So then she says, I'm actually concerned about something with you, Meredith. Like, have you seen the things on TikToks like about Seth's indiscretions? And everyone's like, girl, what are you talking about? And so Britani was like, you haven't seen them saying that Seth has a mistress? And so Heather kind of makes a look and Mary's like, ooh. Like, we go in there with it. So then we see 3 hours earlier, Whitney and Britani were looking at a TikTok from a TikToker by the name of, I don't even know how to, y'all know, a TikTok, I think is Kizelia Dietz. I probably said that wrong. My bad for butchering the lady's name. But she said something to the fact that she has like a picture of Seth with his mistress in New York. And so they're both like, are you serious? So then Meredith ends up saying, my husband does not have a mistress. We are in a monogamous relationship. Now, mind you, I giggled at this, but with that U.S. Weekly article that came out, Meredith says that she has been in speech therapy since she was a child. So I think that's why she speaks the way she does, because of, having a speech impediment. So she was like, we're in a monogamous relationship. She was like, just because your boyfriend breaks up with you every time he wants to go and sleep with someone else, then let that be. But she was like, that's your problem, not mine. Britani was like, I break up with him. And I was like, does it matter, girl? Y'all still breaking up. You still getting back with him. Okay. And she was like, you're a liar and a malicious and duplicitous person because she was like, just because you're jealous and you can't hold a man down, which I mean, holding a man down ain't no flex. But when it comes to a male-centered broad like Britani, who we know has a bad relationship with her kids because she chooses men over her kids, that hits you in the chest right there. And so Britani was like, you haven't seen the TikToks? It's all over TikToks. And then Whitney says, I've seen it. And then Meredith was like, no, she showed it to you. But that's the only way that you've seen it. You didn't, like, it wasn't all over TikTok. So then Meredith is really pissed. She takes the hatchet headband off her head and she throws it across the floor saying, stay away from me. I said, Meredith, we got to stop throwing things, okay? Stop doing that. And so Britani was like, there you go again. You broke a glass on me last night. And Meredith said, no, girl, I was defending myself because you tried to throw water on me. But I was like, Meredith, she wouldn't have thrown water on you if you didn't throw it first. I said, or pour it first politely. So next thing you know, Meredith says, I don't know why Britani is even talking about me or talking about my husband. Like, leave me and my husband alone and just be a miserable bitch by yourself, pretty much. So then they're all just kind of looking at them arguing with each other and going back and forth. And then Meredith's basically saying, like, girl, no one needs your troll commentary. Don't speak to me ever again. And so you see Captain Jason come out to sit down to have dessert with them. He even has on the zombie makeup, and so do crew members do. And so they're still arguing while he's sitting there. And so Meredith ends up saying, like, you know what, girl, you're a gross and disgusting person. Just gross and disgusting. Stay away from me. I knew you were no good a year ago, and I know it even now. And so then Lisa's like, I like how he just gracefully declined, because Captain Jason gets up because he was like, girl, I'm not about to sit here while they arguing like that. I'm not about to do that. And so he just like, bids them good night. He's like, yeah, I can't do this with y'all tonight. And Lisa's like, I'm actually like really embarrassed that just happened. And honestly, they could have like, once he sat down, they should have tapered the argument. Like they should have kind of just let it settle for a minute. Then after eating dessert, then everybody should have, get back to fighting. But once the man sat down, they should have been quiet. Honestly, they've been trying to say that Seth is cheating on Meredith since, I want to say, season 4, but they talked about that in season 5. My thing about it with Britani is, if you were going to bring that information to the group, you should have like been more confident about it. You could tell when she said it, she wasn't confident. Like she was hesitating and fumbling over her words. And I think it was used as a gotcha moment on Meredith, but it worked, but then it didn't work because everyone was looking at Britani like, girl, why are you bringing this up? Like everyone was like, girl, it's from TikTok. Like it's TikTok. But then also Meredith's reaction is like, ooh, girl, is there some truth to it? Or do you just hate Britani? But that's all I got for you guys today, because that's where the episode ended. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. Definitely hop down in the comments below, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and please be on the lookout for more reviews. If you got through the video this far, I do appreciate you. Okay, I'm trying to catch up because I think the next video I have to do is Real Housewives of Orange County. Lord, when I tell you life has been lifing, life has been lifing. But I'm out, y'all. Deuces.